Do you think Zuul is just a fictional monster from a beloved 1980s comedy? What if I told you that the name wasn't invented for Ghostbusters, but instead deliberately hidden in plain sight? The truth about Zuul has been systematically erased from public records for decades. Tonight, that silence ends. In 1923, archaeologist Dr. Malcolm Whitfield led an expedition to a previously unexplored section of ancient Mesopotamian ruins near modern-day Mosul. His field journals, now sealed in the private collection of the Haverford Institute, documented the discovery of a chamber unlike any other found in the region. The walls were covered not with the expected cuneiform writing, but with pictographs depicting what Whitfield described as a crouching quadrupedal entity with an elongated snout and prominent horns. Below these images, repeated throughout the chamber, was a single word in an unidentified script: Zuul. The Whitfield expedition ended abruptly when 3 team members disappeared without trace during the night of April 17th. Local authorities attributed their disappearance to tribal conflicts in the region. The remaining team members, including Whitfield himself, abandoned the site within 48 hours, leaving equipment and several artifact crates behind. Whitfield never published his findings and refused to discuss the expedition for the remainder of his life. The British Museum received 7 artifacts from the chamber in a crate with no return address in November 1923. Among them was a small stone tablet featuring the same horned entity and the Zuul inscription. Museum curator Jeffrey Harrington documented unusual cold spots and persistent shadows in the storage area where the artifacts were kept. After Harrington's apparent suicide in February 1924, the artifacts were transferred to deep storage. Their current whereabouts are officially listed as location unknown in the museum's digital catalog. For nearly 2 decades, the name Zuul vanished from historical records. Then, in 1942, OSS agent Franklin Pierce submitted a classified report about Nazi occult research operations in North Africa. The report, partially declassified in 2001 but heavily redacted, mentioned Operation Zuul, an apparent attempt by Heinrich Himmler's Ahnenerbe organization to locate and excavate the same ruins Whitfield had discovered. Pierce's report noted that local guides refused to approach the site, claiming it was where the shadows wait and watch. The Nazi expedition suffered a more tragic fate than Whitfield's. According to Pierce's report, radio contact with the team ceased on the 7th night of excavation. When Allied forces reached the site 3 weeks later, they found the camp abandoned. Equipment remained in place. Half-eaten meals sat on plates. Tents stood open. 17 men had simply vanished. The only clue was a journal belonging to Dr. Klaus Werner, the expedition's leader, containing a final entry. It watches from the darkness. It knows we have spoken its name. Zuul is coming. The site was sealed by Allied military authorities in January 1943. Official records state the area was designated a restricted zone due to unexploded ordnance. Aerial photographs from 1956 show the entire archaeological site had been covered with earth and debris, effectively burying whatever remained of the chamber. The name Zuul might have been permanently erased from history if not for a series of strange events at Columbia University in the winter of 1962. Professor Walter Peck of the Department of Mesopotamian Studies began researching ancient Sumerian deities with names similar to Zuul after discovering a reference in a previously untranslated clay tablet. Within weeks of beginning his research, students reported seeing Peck talking to himself in empty classrooms. Colleagues noted his increasingly disheveled appearance and paranoid behavior. On December 7th, campus security responded to reports of screaming from Peck's office. They found the room in disarray, papers scattered, books torn apart, and strange claw-like marks gouged into his wooden desk. Peck himself was gone. A campus-wide search yielded nothing. His disappearance remains unsolved. Among Peck's papers, police found dozens of pages covered with a single repeated phrase: Zuul waits in the shadows between worlds. These papers were confiscated by men identifying themselves as FBI agents the day after his disappearance. No official FBI record of this investigation exists. Throughout the 1970s, the name Zuul surfaced occasionally in obscure paranormal research circles. Parapsychologist Dr. Eleanor Twitty published a paper in the Fringe Journal of Spectral Entities, theorizing that certain ancient names functioned as psychic anchors that could, if properly invoked, open doorways between dimensions. She specifically mentioned Zuul as one such entity, describing it as a gatekeeper or herald of something far worse. Twitty's research was dismissed by mainstream academia, and she herself disappeared while researching historical records in the basement archives of the New York Public Library in 1978. The official investigation concluded she had simply abandoned her position and relocated without notice. Then came 1984 and Ghostbusters. The film featured a demonic entity called Zuul, described as the Gatekeeper, serving a destructive deity named Gozer. Most viewers assumed this was simply creative fiction, but how did the name of an obscure entity from sealed archaeological records end up in a Hollywood screenplay? Dan Aykroyd, one of the film's writers and stars, has a well-documented interest in the paranormal. In a rarely seen interview from 1985, Aykroyd mentioned that the name Zuul came to him in a dream, where he saw a horned thing crouching in shadows. The interview was never aired. The footage, stored in the archives of Entertainment Tonight, was reportedly damaged beyond recovery in a storage facility fire in 1987. The only surviving copy is a partial transcript in the private collection of paranormal researcher Martin Haywood. Following the film's release, something strange happened. References to Zuul in academic papers and historical records began to disappear. Digital database entries were altered, physical documents were removed from archives, or had pages mysteriously go missing. By the early 1990s, nearly every pre-1984 reference to Zuul had vanished from public access, leaving the film as the apparent origin of the name. It was as if something was systematically erasing Zuul's historical footprint, hiding behind the convenient fiction that it was merely a movie monster. The pattern of disappearances connected to research into Zuul continued. In 1992, graduate student Melissa Chen began researching mythological entities with names phonetically similar to Zuul for her doctoral thesis at Princeton University. 3 months into her research, she reported being followed by something that stays just at the edge of vision. Security footage from her apartment building showed her entering the elevator on March 18th. The camera inside the elevator captured her looking nervously at the corner of the compartment, though nothing appeared to be there. When the doors opened on the lobby level, the elevator was empty. Chen was never seen again. Princeton University has no official record of Chen ever being enrolled as a student. Her thesis advisor claims no memory of her existence. Only a single photograph in the university yearbook confirms she was ever there. Between 1994 and 2007, 17 separate individuals across 12 countries began independent research into the historical origins of Zuul. Of these 17, 14 disappeared without trace. The remaining 3 suffered catastrophic mental breakdowns, diagnosed with severe paranoid schizophrenia. One of them, former Oxford historian Dr. James Walters, continuously writes the phrase, "It watches from between worlds" on the walls of his room at Broadmoor Psychiatric Hospital. In 2008, paranormal researcher and blogger Rebecca Winters published an online article titled "The Truth About Zuul, Hidden in Plain Sight." The article compiled historical references to the entity and suggested that the name itself functioned as a kind of summoning. The blog post was online for less than 7 hours before the entire site crashed. When it came back online 2 days later, all references to the article were gone, and Winters herself denied ever writing it. 3 witnesses claimed to have downloaded the article before it vanished. All 3 reported computer failures within 24 hours, with their hard drives found to be physically damaged, gouged with what technicians described as claw-like marks. One witness, speaking on condition of anonymity, described seeing a hunched shadow reflected in their monitor while reading the saved article, though nothing was behind them when they turned to look. The pattern is unmistakable. The name Zuul appears throughout history, always connected to shadows, watching, waiting, and disappearance. Those who research it vanish. Those who speak its name attract attention, attention from something that remains just out of sight. Records are altered or destroyed. History is rewritten. The truth is hidden behind a convenient fiction, just a monster in a movie. But the evidence remains for those brave enough or foolish enough to look. Fragments of Whitfield's journal survive in private collections. Photographs of the Nazi expedition site show strange shadows that don't correspond to any physical objects. Audio recordings of Walter Peck's final lecture capture unexplained whispers when played at high volume. And scattered throughout the world are artifacts bearing the inscription Zuul, carefully misfiled and mislabeled in museum storage facilities. The most disturbing development came in 2013 when urban exploration videos began appearing online, showing what appeared to be the original chamber discovered by Whitfield in 1923. The videos, posted anonymously on obscure forums, showed narrow stone passages leading to a circular chamber with wall carvings matching Whitfield's descriptions. In each video, the camera would pan across the carvings before focusing on a dark corner of the chamber where nothing was visible except deeper shadow. At this point in each video, a whispered voice can be heard saying what sounds like, "Zuul sees you." Each video was followed by the disappearance of an urban explorer known to frequent the forums where they were posted. Authorities investigating these disappearances found no trace of the chamber shown in the videos, and digital forensics experts declared the footage likely fabricated. The videos themselves began to disappear from the internet, often along with entire user accounts and sometimes whole forums. In 2017, a Reddit user named HistoryHunter34 claimed to have accessed sealed British Museum storage records showing that the Zuul artifacts had been quietly transferred to a private collection in 1987. According to documents this user claimed to have seen, the transfer was authorized by a museum board member who resigned immediately afterward and died under mysterious circumstances 3 weeks later. The Reddit account was deleted within hours of making these claims, and no trace of the user's identity has been found. What makes the Zuul phenomenon so terrifying is not just the pattern of disappearances or the systematic erasure of evidence. It's the implication that speaking the name, researching the entity, or even becoming aware of its existence is enough to attract its attention. It's as if knowledge itself is the trigger, awareness the trap. Consider this. Before the 1984 film, knowledge of Zuul was limited to a small number of researchers and scholars who invariably disappeared or suffered mental breakdowns. The film then placed the name in the public consciousness, but stripped of its true context and history. Millions spoke the name, but without understanding or belief. Was this deliberate? A way to hide the truth in plain sight? Or something more insidious, a mass invocation of a name of power spoken by millions of unwitting people? Since 2020, reports have emerged of people experiencing strange phenomena after watching the original Ghostbusters film. These accounts, shared in obscure paranormal forums and quickly deleted, describe viewers noticing unexplained shadows in their peripheral vision following the scenes featuring Zuul. Some report hearing whispers when alone. Others describe waking to find claw-like scratches on their bedroom walls or floors. The most disturbing case involved a film studies class at an unnamed Midwestern university in 2022. According to anonymous sources, the entire class of 23 students disappeared after screening Ghostbusters as part of a course on 1980s cinema. Security footage showed them entering the lecture hall, but never leaving. When campus security entered the room 3 hours later, it was completely empty. The university denies this event ever occurred, and local news archives contain no record of such disappearances. Yet photographs circulating on certain encrypted messaging channels show an empty lecture hall with an unusual pattern of shadows stretching from the corners of the room, and what appear to be claw marks on several of the seats. The truth about Zuul has been systematically hidden for a century. Those who discover it vanish. Those who speak of it are silenced. Those who know of it are watched from the shadows. And now you know too. As you've read these words, have you noticed any unusual shadows in your peripheral vision? That slight movement just at the edge of your sight, was it there before? The subtle feeling of being observed. Is that new? The name has been in your mind as you read. Zuul. You've thought it, perhaps even whispered it aloud. Is something watching you now? Some who've researched this phenomenon suggest certain precautions. Never read about Zuul after dark. Never speak the name aloud when alone. Never look directly at unusual shadows. Peripheral awareness is safer than direct observation. Salt lines across doorways and windows might provide protection, though the evidence for this is anecdotal at best. The most effective protection, according to those few researchers who've survived their investigations, is to share the knowledge. Like passing a curse to a new victim, spreading awareness of Zuul may redirect its attention. This may explain why those who've shared their findings publicly often survive longer than those who research in solitude. So perhaps you should share this story, not to frighten others, but to protect yourself. The more who know, the more who speak the name without understanding, the safer you might be. Or perhaps sharing simply feeds it, strengthens it, helps it spread like a virus of awareness. Either way, you've read this far. You know the name, you know the pattern. And somewhere, in the shadows just beyond your vision, something else knows that you know. Tonight, when you're alone in the darkness, pay attention to the shadows in the corners of your room. Watch for movement when there should be none. Listen for whispers when there should be silence. And if you feel a sudden chill, a prickling sensation on the back of your neck, as if something cold and ancient is watching you with patient, hungry eyes, remember that you were warned. Zuul has been waiting for centuries, waiting in the shadows between worlds, waiting for someone to speak its name, to think its name, to fear its name, waiting for you. Do you hear that? That soft scratching sound like claws on wood or stone? It might be nothing, just your imagination sparked by an unsettling story about an entity that may or may not exist. Or perhaps it's closer than you think. Perhaps it's been there all along, watching from the darkness, waiting for you to become aware of its existence. Zuul sees you now, and it's hungry.